Okay, cool guys. So I'm a little bit hoarse today, so just sorry. We are starting, and before we start, as usual, I want to say that this event has been organized by the Weekly Fasting Group. It's a WhatsApp group of individuals from all over the world, and we cultivate the habit of abstinence from food for at least 24 hours a week on a consistent basis, week after week after week. So if this idea appeals to you and you are not a member of this group yet, you can find my phone number. I'm the facilitator of this group. My name is Arik, and my WhatsApp number is going to be below this video. You can send me the WhatsApp message with your name, and I'll happily add you to this group. Okay, so today we have Noa with a brand new webinar. Welcome, Noa.
Thank you, Arik.
And we are going to start with a short guided meditation before we delve into our topic of today. So Noa, over to you.
All right, fantastic. Okay, so find a comfortable seat wherever you may be right now, sitting down or laying down, and gently close your eyes. And very simply, begin bringing your awareness to the present moment. Bringing your awareness to your breath, to the flow of your breath going in and out through the nostrils. Very gentle breathing in and out with no effort, not trying to do anything. The simplicity of being here now in this moment. Bring your awareness to any, if there are any points of tension in your body. Maybe in your neck or your shoulders, your back, anywhere in your body that you might holding any tension. Bring your awareness to it. And with your breath, allow that tension to melt away. And it might be mental or emotional tension. It might not even be physical. Inhale deeply, deeply through your nose. And as you exhale, send the breath to any points of tension, physically or otherwise, and see it melting away. Anything that is preventing you or might prevent you from being fully present in this now moment, being fully present in your body. This is the greatest gift that we've been given. This present moment. The whole universe is living inside of you right here, right now. Bring your undivided attention, your undivided presence to this miracle, the miracle of life that you are, that we are. Let's contemplate this sense of being me here and now. What a mystery. What a miracle. Direct your awareness and attention to your heart center. And if you tuned in deep enough, you can feel your heart beating in your chest. Feel it. Nothing to do, nothing to try. Being with your heart, with your beating heart. Inhale deeply into your heart center, and then hold your breath for a few moments. In that moment of suspension, you may be feeling your heart beating in your chest a bit stronger. Hold it as long as you wish, and when you're ready, nice and slowly, you exhale through the mouth. Maybe add some sound to it, a little sigh. Again, let it all melt away. Staying connected to your beating heart. To this miracle of this now moment. Being utterly in love with this present moment. Bask in the beauty of your own radiance, shining from within. And you can stay with your eyes closed whenever you feel ready. And softly and slowly open your eyes, and we'll continue with our presentation here today.
Okay. Okay, no, thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys, for participation. And let's go straight to the webinar. It's very intriguing, very, like when you gave me the title of today's webinar, I was intrigued. Like eating disorders, food freedom, and what was the third one?
The path of liberation.
The path of liberation. So I am eager to know more about it and to delve into this subject. So please, Noa, enlighten us about that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Arik. And I will speak and present some of what I have written down and been downloaded in the last week. And then, of course, if there are any questions, Arik, that you would like to ask regarding this topic, and then we can open it up to other questions, and then of course in the chat while I'm speaking. Yeah, so thank you, Arik, first of all, for again providing the space and hosting this, and it was such divine alignment that there was an open spot for this week.
It's my pleasure. It's absolutely my pleasure.
Yeah, I feel that because we're all connected, the law of oneness, we are all one. When I feel, when there's this almost urgent, not urgent, but it was so, everything came through so clearly, then I know that there's somebody or more people that are ready to receive this information, because it always works in this way. And so thank you for those that showed up here today and those that are listening to this webinar later. As I mentioned, even if food disorders is not something that you resonate with, the content that I'll be sharing today will be of value regardless. And to some degree, and I mentioned that in the teaser that I made, we are all subjected to some kind of food disorders. So I'm going to also break it down and talk about food disorders and the different categories. You can say the more classic food disorders that we are aware of, but then in general, how food has been distorted in our society, and eating, and our relationship to food, and our relationship to eating, and the fact that we actually devolved from breatharian pranic state, which is our natural state, which is our liberated state. And freedom is something that is my top value, you can say. My name, Noa, N-O-A, the way it's spelled, means to be free in Hawaiian. And it really suits me. It really resonates with me, because it is something that I strive for. And since I was little, I've always been, you can say, a rebel in a sense. And in recent years, I am understanding deeper and deeper the profound meaning of freedom. When I sent out a prayer, whenever it was years ago, liberate me. A liberation is what I want. Little did I know what it meant. And I still continue to discover what it means, freedom and liberation, and being liberated while in a physical body, while having this human experience. It's not about I'm going to be liberated and free when I transition, when I'm out of my body, but really I feel that part of why we are here now, those of us that are on a deep and profound spiritual path, is to find that liberation, or return back. It's not even finding, returning back to our state of liberation and freedom while in this human physical vehicle. And that is true mastery in my humble perspective. And my intention and wish is to provide inspiration for those of you that resonate with what I'm sharing here right now in regards to freedom and liberation, and your own personal path and your own personal journey in this life. So a little bit of a background in regards to my history and my experience with what we classify in our society as food disorders as we know it. The main two that most people are familiar with is anorexia and bulimia. And my mind has been blown away in the last couple of days as I'm seeing the pieces coming together, as I'm having a broader and deeper, more profound understanding of my own experience with anorexia and bulimia, and really seeing the deeper spiritual underlying forces that operate in someone's psyche when they are subjected to what we call anorexia. So on a soul level, what I have received, the clarity that I have received, and that actually I tuned into that about a year ago when I did a water fast. And I received this clarity that even though my motivation back that was a teenager when I started, you can say, starving myself in the name of wanting to be skinny. So the motivation was a distorted body image. The motivation was I wanted to be thin. On the surface, however, there's always spiritual forces underneath the surface that propel us, whether we know it or not. So our soul is always at work. Our soul is always moving us in the direction of our greatest liberation, really, and our greatest embodiment of the light that we are in this life. So although on the surface, the drive for me was to be skinny because I had a distorted body image, the clarity that I received was that on a soul level, I actually was moving in the direction of being food free, of living off prana, of not really needing food to sustain myself. And also the benefits that I received now that I'm advocating anorexia, but the fact that I gave my body a break from eating. I didn't know anything about fasting back then. Again, I was a teenager, but actually I probably had a significant amount of healing to some degree while I was on a fasting mode for a while. The difference is, of course, the mental and the emotional, the energetics behind what I was doing. So it's not so much what we do, but it's how we do it. And most importantly, is the intent. It's the energy behind what we do. That's the difference. And a lot of pranic beings, a lot of breatharians are being asked this question. Well, if you can live without food and water, how come people starve to death? How come as an anorexic person, I did lose a significant amount of weight, and I of course I wasn't happy, and there were a lot of other things that came with it because it's a very dark place to be. But that's because of the energy, because of the fuel that was moving me on the journey that I put myself on. That's the difference. But again, I feel, and again, that's the clarity that for me, I already tapped into some sort of wisdom in regards to food and not needing that much of physical sustenance. And on a spiritual level, I was already awakening to that reality. And now, how many years later, I was in high school back then. So 20 years, about, 20 years, a little bit more, 21 years. I now come full circle, you can say, and having more clarity and understanding of my own personal journey. And then other individuals, and it's especially women, although I know there are men that have the same journey of anorexia and starvation in that way because of body image. I feel that there's a common thread for all people that have been or are subjected to this reality of wanting to become really, really thin, wanting to become really skinny, not really eating. Understand that underneath the surface of that, there's already a wisdom at play. And the connection to the reality of being food free, of being liberated, of returning back to what I prefer to refer to as our natural state. We've had speakers on these webinars talking about that. And I'm really reframing now the whole concept of fasting and approaching it from that clarity, from that understanding. It is our natural state. We have descended, we haven't evolved from a monkey. More so, we have devolved, as I said, from divine human that nourishes oneself by the elements that are available to us at all times. Now we can get into the gray areas of our bodies are so clogged up and so obstructed that we are unable to really ingest all this prana. That's a topic by itself. And I'll touch on it a little bit during this webinar when it comes to regenerative detoxification and why it is so essential. And then, of course, we have the elements of the environmental, what is external to us, that are not ideal. Like the air is not as clean, the water is not as clean, and it's mainly the air that is not as clean. And so to return to our natural state, for those that really aspire to that level of liberation, I feel, not to say that you are unable to do it in a city and doing life as usual. However, though, I feel that in order to at least get established in that state, to purify the body, to purify the mind, and to be exposed to more pure environment, it does require one to get away for a little while and be immersed in a supportive environment that supports this aspiration and that supports the natural evolution and the natural cleansing and purifying of the body and the mind. But of course, we do the best we can with what we have. So going back to my background, my experience with that part of my life, as we call anorexia, this is just something that I read last night. And it was absolutely perfect bringing it into this conversation. And again, seeing more and more pieces coming together, and it's so beautiful. There's actually, so again, I just learned it last night, but there are two different kind of what we call anorexia. The medical term that is being used to describe people that basically starve themselves because they want to be skinny is called anorexia nervosa. And that's the term that people are familiar with, and the medical establishment has put a stamp on that, not really understanding the mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic implications of anorexia nervosa. And of course, medical establishment doesn't really care or know much about holistic view. They don't see humans from a holistic perspective, and therefore they don't really factor in the other elements. And that's why, again, for myself, even when I was on that chapter in my life, when it was time to, okay, we got to get Noa better, my family intervened, and I was in high school, so the teachers, things got a little bit more involved, and I was taken to a dietitian, and of course they know nothing about nutrition, and all they wanted me to do is just gain weight. And I was put on like the worst kind of diet you can imagine, just eat ice cream and French fries, just fatty foods to gain weight. I mean, the ridiculousness of that, and the ignorance is beyond me. But again, we evolve, we learn. It's part of my journey. It's part of my experience, and I'm just thrilled that I can see more clearly. So anorexia nervosa, okay, that's the term that we are familiar with. So what I learned last night is that there's a different state of anorexia that is called anorexia mirabilis. It's Latin, which actually is the miraculous anorexia. We've also, the association with the word anorexia is so distorted, right? Because we see it as an eating disorders. We were never taught what is the real meaning of anorexia. And anorexia mirabilis, it was a practice in ancient times, especially by Catholic and Christian, mainly women, that were devoted to God, that were devoted to a spiritual path. And they, with that clarity, with that wisdom, renounced food altogether. There was renunciation of many other things, and we are living in different times. I don't really prescribe to the idea of we need to suffer, we need to sacrifice ourselves in order to be worthy of God or of Christ and everything that was involved back then. However, though, I extract the pieces of wisdom that resonate with me, that are applicable to our times, and what I feel that I am here to fulfill and bring forth. So putting aside, because I was reading some material about anorexia mirabilis, and putting aside the whole suffering and I need to prove something, and some of these women were motivated by that. I need to sacrifice myself, and I need to deprive myself, and I need to suffer in order to be worthy of Christ. And again, coming from the Catholic Church and Christian and the Christian religion. So apparently the Vatican knows everything about anorexia mirabilis, and anything, for me, when I see religion as part of something, I know there's distortion there. That the wisdom of something has been distorted, has been suppressed. And from anorexia mirabilis, that there was a practice of renouncing food in order to return back to natural state, it has turned into anorexia nervosa, which is connected with distorted body image and starving oneself and the dark side of it. But the wisdom and the light side of what we refer to as anorexia has been hidden, just like many other things that are controlled by religion and controlled by other forces that, let's say, do not want humans necessarily to awaken and return back to their natural state. So I want to just put down this foundation to have a deeper understanding of, again, what we refer to as eating disorders and the spiritual implications of that. And if you have history with anorexia in the past and maybe now, hopefully this sheds a little bit more light on your soul's urges, that on the surface you may have been subjected and suffered from distorted body image and wanting to be skinny, and underneath the surface there's something deeper, a deeper wisdom that you have tapped into. And I want to also give the example of sometimes the motivation on the surface might seem shallow or in vain, but there's that it's a door to enter a deeper dimension. So when I started practicing yoga, that was 16 years ago, I started practicing Bikram yoga. It's hot yoga, it's the sweaty yoga. And my motivation, just like with starving myself, was that I wanted to lose weight. I heard that you burn a lot of calories in a Bikram yoga class. And that got me there. I'm like, okay, sign me up. I wasn't overweight or anything, but like, okay, great. Just sign me up. And the kind of person that I am, when I find something that really resonates with me, I go in full on and I don't look back. And that's something that has really worked for me throughout the years. It's been a double-edged sword, but I'm learning how to use it constructively. But I dedicate myself. I find something that resonates with me, and it's like my soul clicks in and I'm full into it. And so same thing was with Bikram yoga. And that was my first experience with yoga. And I was in that hot room 6 days a week, 7 days a week sometimes. Later on, I became a teacher, but it was through yoga it was through that experience initially that a lot of my healing started to take place. And a lot of my body image issues started to be healed. The initial stages, because it's a journey. And that is one of the reasons why I felt really compelled to present this webinar, because I see how much of it is a journey and how much of it is still playing in the background. So even though I got into yoga from, again, this not so spiritual reason, everything is spiritual at the end of the day, because that's who we are. So I got into yoga because I wanted to burn calories and look better. But then everything else that opened up for me as a result was not something that I was aware of or conscious of. So I want to tie those two together, as I was talking about anorexia. And even though the motivation was to be skinny, underneath the surface, there was something a lot more profound that now is revealing itself as I have been exposed to fasting. And then more than that really is the pranic living, our natural state. So that's a little bit of my background, and coming from a lot of experience, you can say, in that department. And it's a topic that is really close and dear to my heart, because I understand the implications of that in one's life. And so what happens when we have a history of starving oneself and anorexia and bulimia, but then we get on this path, we discover the wisdom of fasting, we discover the wisdom of pranic living, we discover the wisdom of living in our natural state and being liberated from the attachments and the addictions to food, to really see food as what it is. It's not more than a drug. And just like we get addicted to smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol or whatever it may be, food is no different. It creates stimulation in the body, and we get addicted to that kind of stimulation. So that is all good and dandy, and I can have a conscious understanding of that. However, what do we do practically when the two paths or the two ideas clash? The one being, okay, fasting, prana, food freedom, and the other is having history with food disorders, having history with body image, having history with starving oneself, and the implication that has on one's psyche, on one's body. And when I say body, we're looking at the physical body, we're looking at the astral body or the emotional body, we're looking at the mental body, we're looking at the energetics. When somebody has been subjected to what I described as anorexia and bulimia, those two main food disorders. And I'm going to get into, the subcategories of food disorders in just a little bit. But just to address how to make peace, how to create harmony when the two exist simultaneously. And that's the clarity that I have been receiving for myself on this path. And then being connected to other people and working with clients and working with women that have had eating disorders. And again, it's still playing in the background, that maybe it's not as dark. Maybe the body image, the distorted body image, is not as distorted, but what's really important to understand is when there is a history of, I'll just speak about anorexia for the time being, when there is a history of starving oneself, the imprint that leaves in one's psyche and how and why it can hinder, no matter how great of an aspiration somebody has to fast and to do a longer fast. And then even more than that, being free of food. And it's really not about eating or not eating. And I recommend, if you do aspire to dive deeper into pranic living, to just check out Elitam Elamin a little bit, because the way he teaches the pranic path is so practical. It's so down to earth. It's not about eating or not eating. It really is not. It's a level of consciousness. It's to get to a place in which our consciousness is so grounded in unity and oneness that letting go of food, letting go of the attachments to food, the addictions to food, happen naturally and organically. And that is a big part of what I'd like to convey here today. The importance of letting things unfold naturally and organically, especially, and this is the caveat, especially if you do have history with anorexia, with food disorders. Because what happens is, and I mentioned the reptilian brain as one of the bullet points for today. The reptilian brain is the part of our brain that is animalistic. It operates on instincts. It operates on survival. When somebody starves themselves, I'm not talking about fasting and conscious intentional fasting. I'm talking about anorexia. When somebody starves themselves because they want to be skinny, or because they maybe they're an athlete, people that compete a lot. There's a lot of eating disorders in those arenas as well. Competitive sports and people that maybe not look anorexic necessarily, but the mentality is of an anorexic. And there is deprivation and there is starvation. And I'm going to dive into deprivation. So when there is a history of anorexia and food disorders, the reptilian brain is very active, because when somebody is in starvation and deprivation mode, there is a survival mode that automatically is triggered all the time. Of course, there's also the activation of fight and flight, which is connected to the survival mode. So the reptilian brain is very, very active and hardwired to be in survival mode. Hardwired, understand that concept. It's the way our brain operates. It's all about neural pathways. So just like if you think about a river that has been flowing for a very long time, there's the marks of the water. The water has created a pathway, and that's where the water is going to flow, through that pathway, after years and years and years of running through the same stream, right? It's marked there. Same thing goes to our brain and our neural pathways. After years and years and years, and I'm not even talking about ancestral and the DNA that we have inherited, that is part of those neurological pathways. That is just another aspect of that. But if we take your personal psyche, which is a little bit hard for me to even separate because it's not separated, But you take your personal psyche and your history, and if you were in a mode of starving yourself, no matter what the motivation, you wanted to be skinny, you wanted to prove something, you an athlete, whatever it may be, but you've created a pathway of starvation, of depriving oneself, and that has created a neural pathway, and that's where the water is flowing. That's how the water knows how to flow. The reptilian brain is hardwired, the survival mode. So you take an individual such as that, and you show them, well, there's fasting, there's pranic living. You can fast for 24 hours. You can fast for 21 days. You can do dry fasting. As we know, when we get exposed to this beautiful and noble path, we start discovering what is possible. From liquids, like, oh, I can just live on water, and like, I don't even need water, and all those beautiful things. However, though, when you take an individual that the reptilian brain is so hardwired and there's so much survival because of trauma. If you've ever had any type of an eating disorders, you have traumatized your inner child. You have traumatized your inner being. You have activated your reptilian brain to a very high degree. And there is an underlying trauma and a flavor of trauma within your being, which I connected to the inner child. The inner child is also connected to what we refer to as the ego. And the inner child is also connected to what we refer to as the lower chakras, the first and the second chakra. That's where our instincts live. That's where our desires live. That's where our pleasure lives. That's where our survival lives. And all those things are connected. Your reptilian brain, your ego, your inner child, your lower chakras, first and second chakras, all are connected. So if there's a hardwiring of the survival mode within the reptilian brain, there's also a distortion happening in the first and second chakras on a continuous basis. And the inner child is in a continuous state of struggle, because there's trauma and there's feeling of I'm not safe. I'm not safe here in this body. And food is just one way in which we can provide the sense of safety. Now, it's different for every person, but when we look at the material world, we look at three main things: money, food, sex. And I would say for most individuals, there's distortion in all areas, or at least one: food, money, sex. All those three are connected to the first and second chakras. All are connected to safety. And so each individual has a different vice, you can say, to bring that sense of safety into one's own body, into one's own psyche. But I'll stick to food on this one, because that's the topic. But you might be able to find some sort of clarity when it comes to your situation, if it is money, if it is sex, looking for that false security, for that false sense of safety, or a false source outside of ourselves to create safety. And so in order to bring healing to that trauma, we got to create safety from within. Nothing external is going to bring resolution. It's a band-aid on an open wound. It might work for a little while, but it's not addressing the cause, which is the same thing like regenerative detoxification. You can take supplements, you can do the things, it's not addressing the root cause, and that's why you're never really addressing what is happening underneath the surface, and there's no resolution. So to bring resolution, to bring healing to that trauma, we must understand what I've explained so far, the neural pathways that have been created for somebody with a history of eating disorders and starvation, and that the inner child feels very unsafe, and it feels traumatized. And the trauma comes also from years and years of deprivation. So when somebody has a history of deprivation, the distortions, it's really kind of like neglecting the inner child, the inner being, and that's why the inner child doesn't feel safe. There's a form of self-denial. And the biggest word really that to me explains it is depriving oneself. So for somebody with a history of that sense of deprivation, as I said, the reptilian brain is so hardwired to the mode of starvation and survival. It's really essential for that kind of individual to enter the world of fasting, food freedom, and breatharianism, the different levels, right? We can play with it. But for somebody that aspires to that, and this is the hidden resistance that I was referring to, it is essential to apply gentleness and to repattern the brain from deprivation / starvation denial to allowance, safety, and embracing that little one inside that is looking for comfort. So that's why you can listen to many different speakers, and there's so many beautiful souls and so many beautiful teachers on this path of when it comes to fasting and chronic living. And we all have different karmas, right? We all, even though, yes, the bottom line is that we are all pranic beings. That's what we are designed to consume, you can say. But then we look at the gray areas of how one size doesn't fit all. Because not everybody comes from a background, a history of starvation and anorexia. And so where for one individual, it's really not a traumatic experience to go and do a 7-day dry fast or 10-day or 11 days, then Jenny that is sitting next to Bob is a completely different story and is extremely traumatic for somebody like Jenny that has history with eating disorders and anorexia to jump into fasting. Because what happens, and that's the journey, what happens is that once somebody starts fasting, even though the motivation now is different, but there's still that trauma signature playing in the background, the reptilian brain is still activated. And then you put somebody like that in a fasting mode, and that's when you start going back and forth from fasting to binging to fasting to binging. And maybe it's not like a full-on binge, but it's the yo-yo. And I've experienced it so much. I know so many others being part of different groups, working with clients with the exact same challenge. I have no problem to fasting for 3, 4, 5. Some people can even go as long as 10 and 11 days and no problem. But then there's that going back to food. And once they start eating, it's like, I can't stop. Right? The overeating. Then what do? Where's the freedom there? And that's the wall that I keep hitting. If I want freedom, it's really not about eating, not eating. It's freedom from that. Freedom from those patterns, freedom from the attachments, freedom from the addictions, freedom from the patterns that have been hardwired in the psyche. And how do we do that? So keep going on the same track of fasting and then overeating and fasting and overeating, obviously it's insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. But I know the wisdom. I know what I'm capable of. I know what's available for me. So how do I do that in a way that honors the trauma, that honors that part of me that is still looking for that safety and the comfort? And so that's when it becomes essential, absolutely essential, for this path to be sustainable, for this path to actually be doable and healthy physically, mentally, and emotionally. You got to bring self-compassion and actually understand that allowing yourself to have certain things might be the path, rather than just discipline yourself to fast and I don't want to eat this ever and ever again. I'm going to stop eating it. I'm never going to touch it. And then there's that tension inside. So what I have come to find on my journey and healing that trauma and start releasing the grip of the reptilian brain and the inner child kicking and screaming, wanting to be safe, wanting to be comforted, is to give myself the permission to actually have certain things that I have deemed to be bad, like food-wise. And that has provided me more healing and liberation than white knuckle myself into a particular mode that I aspire to live by. Just giving you an example, a very recent one. I'm here in Mexico, right? Now, I've been, you can say, mainly fruitarian for many years. I do believe that if we do eat, then fruit is the food for humans, period. Our bodies are designed, if they were to digest anything, to digest fruits. So it's my number one food choice of food. That's what I consume most of the time, if it's not fasting or liquids. But then there's still a part of me, you can say, that craves other things. It's not active all the time. And there's the physical implications or the physical reasons for that, which I'll go into in just a moment when it comes to fungus and parasites. But there's, again, the energetic reasons, sources of those cravings. After so many years of depriving myself, it's like the inner child is like an animal. It's an animal in starvation that once you let it loose, it's just going to go crazy. So observing that pattern in me, I'm like, okay, how do we bring harmony into this? How do we bring peace? And love is always the answer, no matter what the question is. I live by that. It's a top value of mine. It's what I teach. Love is the answer, no matter what the question is. What would love do now? So sometimes what would love do now is like, no, don't have this whatever food. Or love would do now is fast. It's different every time. But going back to the example, I'm here in Mexico. And when I was still eating cooked food, tamales, if some of you know what it is, it's this corn thing that is made out of corn, is something that I loved so much. And I haven't had tamales in like so many freaking years, right? And I'm here in Mexico, and of course there's tamales everywhere. And the town where I am right now, there's also a lot of more awareness when it comes to vegan food and raw food. So there's actually options for vegan tamales where there's no cheese, there's no meat, because I wouldn't eat like a meat tamale, but a vegetable, yes. So I was fighting myself for days. But I wanted tamale, like my inner child, like I just wanted tamale. And there was funny synchronicity too of this lady on the beach, and she had vegan tamales and I didn't have money to buy it. And then she just showed up at the retreat center where I'm doing my yoga training. The day after, she just showed up there. I'm like, this is so funny. And I know that I created that in my own wanting to have a tamale of like, how did she show up here now? And long story short, I got the freaking tamales. And actually, that's where this whole webinar came, through the tamales. I was having the tamales and I realized this is actually more healing for me than shushing down my inner child and deprive that little girl that just wants a tamale. Again, it's not the same for everybody, but for somebody like me, as I explained, and those of you that have years and years of deprivation, it's more healing. It's actually going to help me understand there's no such thing as taking steps back. I could have gone into guilt and whatever. Oh my God, I had a tamale, blah, blah, blah. I took a few steps back and I realized actually, no, I'm moving forward because my aspiration, because I don't have the intention to just go back to cooked food and just like eat like an animal. No, my first and second chakra are not that all over the place. So my higher chakras are aligned enough and connected enough to, I have the aspiration of being free of food and living as pranic as possible. I've seen my trajectory. I know that that's where I'm heading. So the question to ask oneself is, what is actually going to move me in a sustainable way in the direction of my aspiration? And if it's having the tamale, then I'm going to have the tamale, because it's more about the level of consciousness rather than what it is that I'm eating. And so on the topic of eating disorders, and if you resonate with that and you have history of deprivation and inner denial or self-denial, if you aspire to be this lifestyle sustainable for you, or have this lifestyle be sustainable for you, and that it is a lifestyle that you want to continue, then you want it to be sustainable. And in order for it to be sustainable, you got to address hidden traumas and hidden resistances and things underneath the surface that might be hindering your greatest aspiration. And belief systems when it comes to food, when it comes to you eating certain foods, because that's another thing that goes into somebody that has had anorexia. Like food becomes the enemy, and that is something that must be healed first. We can master anything, or I'm sorry, we can transcend anything before we master it. The mastery must come first. And when I say master, is really just making peace, is coming to peace with whatever it may be. So if I want to transcend, you can say, the concept of food. If I aspire to become food free and feed off prana, I first got to make peace with food. I got to make peace. I got to have a correct relationship with food before I can transcend it. But if I come into this, if it's fasting or pranic living, but there's still a tug of war inside of me, like food is the enemy or the body is the enemy. Because anyone that has ever had anorexia or have been subjected to anorexia, knowingly or not, you are at war with your body. You are at war with your physical incarnation in a human form. That's why I said there's a lot of spiritual implications to anorexia and eating disorders. There's a lot underneath the surface that requires a complete separate, I feel, webinar or just like a whole thing, because It's being at war with one's own human experience in a body. So you got to make peace with that body. It's one thing to have the understanding concept on a conscious level, the conscious wisdom. Okay, this body is a miracle. It's a piece of art. It's a body that has been created by the creator, infinite intelligence. Okay, great. There's all that conscious understanding and wisdom, but the subconscious, underneath the surface, still might be a war. Still might see the body, the human experience, the human existence, and everything comes with it. Food, sex, money, all the things that are distorted. But food is the enemy as well. So if those two things are playing in the background, but you want to fast for longer, and you want to be food free, and you want to be pranic, good luck. Because there's a constant war inside of you. And then you get on the cycle of feeling bad about yourself and, well, what is wrong with me? How come I'm unable to fast? You want it to be natural. It's not about fasting. It's just being in your natural state. Our natural state is love. But if there's war inside, and there's no love for oneself on all levels, and there's no embracing of that inner child with compassion, then there's the essence of the consciousness is still that of disharmony and lack of peace and lack of unity, which makes chronic living impossible. So I'm all about letting things unfold organically and naturally. And the way to do that is to actually set up the foundation that is the fuel for your aspiration, whatever the aspiration may be. Right now, we're sitting in a fasted group, chronic living, and that's what is applicable. That's what is relevant. Bringing peace, bringing love, coming to that state of love. You want that to be the fuel for the endeavor of fasting and being food free. But first, as I said, you got to make peace. Got to make peace with food and correct and erase and reconstruct the belief systems around it. Now, it can be a slippery slope because I noticed too, and that's what's so great about just being in observation, being in the present moment and observing what's happening. So some people, I'm in that category, because some people may be able to have the tamale and then done. Because my reptilian brain was so hardwired for so long, and the trauma is so deep, that for me, it's not as easy to have that one tamale and move on. Then it just opens the floodgates. And that's when people overeat. The one tamale turns into 4. I'm stuffed. I don't feel so good. Ugh, here I am again. So that's when we blend. This is where the feminine and the masculine come together. This is when we start to create peace. We start to create harmony. We start to bring the inner child, the first chakra, the lower chakras with the higher chakras. The higher chakras are associated with more of the adult, you can say the conscious mind, the wisdom. So to be aware enough of what's happening, because I see what occurs in the body. Okay, when I have the tamale or I have whatever, and it's made with salt and the oil, and then the cravings kick in. And that's why it can be difficult on a physical level, not just emotionally and energetically, but on a physical level, once we open the door. And I feel that that's why a lot of people don't open the door at all, because they know, well, if I have just a little bit, then it kicks in all the other cravings, because you start getting the salts in and the fats and the oils and the cooked food, extremely addictive. And I see that it has such an addictive qualities to it. But that's part of making peace, and that's part of the mastery of actually, I am able, and it's a journey, it doesn't happen overnight, but I am able, because I'm observing, because I'm not identified with all these cravings and the food that I'm ingesting, I am able to have it. I see what is happening, but then the inner wisdom and the higher wisdom kicks in, and I'm good. I'm not going to continue perpetuating the state. So that's where a part of the healing and part of, you can say, this game that we are playing with the inner child is having agreements. Okay, sweetie, you want the tamale? You're going to have the tamale. And then that's it. And little by little, we start to create a sense of safety and moving from deprivation to allowing, moving from deprivation to love and compassion. And knowing that that love and compassion is the doorway that is going to create sustainability, that is going to create a strong foundation to liberate oneself from the addictions, from the attachments, and from the trauma, if that is still playing in the background. And to start bringing peace to where once there was war with one's own body, relationship to one's own body, and with food. And that's how we start to heal and regenerate. And when it comes to regenerative detoxification, as I mentioned earlier, and the role that it plays on this journey, physically and emotionally, when it comes to the belief systems. So on a physical level, when it comes to those cravings and, man, I really want this food and this food, so I better not have it at all, because if I do, then I'll start eating everything. Because I gotta address the physical, because it all works together. The issue of fungus and parasites and the importance of addressing that in order to be able to fast more easily, in order to be food free more naturally. Because as long as you've got fungus in your body and parasite and or, they're controlling the show, my friends. And I've been observing that so deeply, so acutely. They have grip on your consciousness, on your tummy, and it's very uncomfortable. And again, there's a sense of war, because you're literally fighting microorganisms within your body. They ask for one thing, but you want another thing. You want to fast, you want to be food free, you want to feed off prana. Those little creatures don't give a flying F about prana. They just want the tamales and the pizzas and whatever. And then you throw into the mix the reptilian brain and the trauma and distortions around food. I mean, it's a soup of what the F? What do we do with all of this, right? So that's why compassion and love and knowing, like, this human experience is mysterious and miraculous and very interesting. The regenerative detoxification path, though, is such an essential key. And if you want to experience more ease in your fasting and in your food freedom journey. And we're not going to go into the topic of regenerative detoxification for sure. And there are many speakers that have come before me that have talked about that. Ivana is one of them, and other regenerative detoxification specialists that advocate and teach the path of regenerative detoxification. But what I wanted to mention here when it comes to that, so we have the parasite and the fungus, and how important it is to detox the body and to remove those creatures out of your body. And it's not about just killing. Like, a lot of people go on this killing feat of, I'm just going to kill all the parasites and all the fungus. But if your elimination channels are not open, that's just not going to, again, it's just putting a Band-Aid on an open wound. And understanding also that one of the reasons why people have so much fungus that is controlling the show and controlling your tummy and your cravings is that when you have weak adrenals, which is 98% of people, well, maybe not 98, but a large percent of people with weak adrenals, your body don't metabolize sugar well. And that creates fermentation, and that creates systemic fungus. And when you have systemic fungus, you're going to have continuous cravings, and it's not easy to fast, or it's, again, the yo-yo. I'm fasting, but then I still want to eat so much, and once I eat a little bit, then I can't stop. There's the black and the white, right, of the eating disorders there, and then there's the spectrum. And that's why I put food disorders in quotations, because what we refer to as food disorders usually is like anorexia, bulimia, but pretty much majority of people have some sort of a disorder. But again, understanding the reasons, right? And where cravings come from, and how come it can really hinder one's aspiration to be free of all of that. And so regenerative detoxification addresses the cause. You have weak adrenals. Your kidneys are not working well. You can kill all the fungus you want, but you're not addressing the cause. So the fungus will continue to come back. And so unless you do live on prana, and that's going to address everything. But in order to get there, again, we're talking about sustainability. How do we make this sustainable so the fungus don't continue to come back? Because you might be fasting for 10, 11 days, but then you go back to eating. And especially if you want to feed on fruits, which is the ideal food for humans, but then your adrenals are not metabolizing sugar really well, and then the fungus come back. And of course, fasting is the path to healing ultimately. And if you do frequent fasting, then eventually your adrenals will recover. So it's a journey. But as I mentioned, and of course, part of this talk, what does a person do when there is history of eating disorders, and fasting can actually cause more trauma than anything else. And it's more advisable for that kind of individual. And that is something I learned about myself, is to actually embark on shorter fasts before diving into 7, 9, 10, 11, 12-day dry fasts, which my ambitious, I'm very much this, like, I can do it. And my soul is very strong in that way. And I don't want to just do 3 days of dry fast. I want to do 10 or whatever. And so to understand that the best approach sometimes for somebody is to actually do the shorter ones. And that may not bring such a profound healing like a 9 or 11-day dry fast, right? So it's a case by case, but that's where the regenerative detoxification comes in, and addressing fungus, addressing parasites, addressing the elimination, which is the most important thing, the eliminative channels in the body. And that's when fasting becomes easier. And simultaneously, because what happens with regenerative detoxification, and that's why I'm just such an advocate of it, it addresses everything. As we know, we are a complete unit, but it cleans house on a cellular level. And what does that mean? everything that I mentioned earlier in regards to the trauma, in regards to the reptilian brain, in regards to the deprivation, all those belief systems that are hardwired to the cellular level as part of the neurological pathways also that I was referring to. And when you start to detoxify and regenerate to that level, rest assured that you are addressing things on a cellular level, knowingly or not. And we're talking about ancestral trauma, we're talking about to the DNA level, basically, that is being addressed. And that's why detox sometimes feels so overwhelming, right? Because so much comes up to the surface, because it's literally from within your cells. So not just on a physical level that you are detoxing on a cellular level and the body regenerates itself, but psychically speaking, or on a psyche level, psychologically, emotionally, things are being addressed as well, all the way to the cellular level, to the cellular memory. So if there's a cellular memory for me with this traumatic signature of the reptilian brain being activated on survival mode, the more I detox, the more I cleanse, the more I purify, and I actually prefer the word purify over detox, but the more I purify physically, mentally, and emotionally, those cellular memories start to fade away and make room for new patterns to come in. And that's where yoga and meditation is absolutely essential. Now, you might have different practices. I can only share what has been beneficial for me. And the yoga system is absolutely brilliant, and meditation, because it's in, like, sometimes we are so driven by, what can I do? Give me this method and this protocol, and what to eat and what to ingest and what not to eat, even with the fasting, and like how to fast, how many days, how to break out of the fast. And we're so consumed by the doing. And the most healing thing is actually the being, and the being that takes place within meditation. And there's so much healing and there's so much reconstruction that happens without you apparently doing anything. It's kind of like a secret that nobody wants you to know. That is part of you, of the medicine, because energetically, so much takes place within the body, within the being, when you just sit there and allow things to happen. Bringing the intention, bringing the intent, because it's all about purity of intent, of regeneration of the body, of filling the body with light, body full of light, body full of light. And fully knowing and fully trusting, you can say surrender to this divine wisdom that has the ability to heal and regenerate every aspect of your being, and to purify your body, to purify emotional body, mental body, physical body, and energetic body, to purify that to the degree, to the level in which you are so established in unity and in love that living off prana is really not an issue anymore. It becomes natural state, because that is our natural state. So everything that we experience outside of that is just not our natural state. And that's why the fruits is a step in that direction, because that is the closest, the fruits are the closest to our natural state in a physical sustenance. Because our natural state feeds off electricity from the elements, from the air, from sunlight, prana, life force, chi. It's called differently in every culture. It doesn't matter. It's the same divine intelligence that animates everything. So we don't need anything external, like the fruit, the food that we eat has prana too. A piece of meat has prana. Life force is in everything and in everywhere. It's God, even in a dead piece of meat. But then we just look at the level of life force, that a dead piece of meat has a complete different electricity, chemistry, and life force than a fresh picked mango, right? And that has different implications on your consciousness. So the fruits is kind of like a step, and this is the clarity that I am receiving after being exposed to the fruitarian journey for so long. It's a step in the direction of, well, a natural state is actually prana, right? But the fruits are the closest to that divine prana, life force, electricity in a physical sustenance that you can ingest, and kind of like it's a mediator, an external thing that you can ingest that is the closest thing to that natural state that is already within us, that it's already us. And when somebody starts ingesting the fruits, that's why the immense transformation is absolutely mind-boggling on so many levels, and how one physicality completely changes as well. Like the features, the face, everything changes. Why is that? Because matter is fueled by energy. So even the facial features completely change once somebody starts to purify. How do you explain that? Because it's the energy behind it. It's what actually is moving and orchestrating all the cells in your body. It's not physical. So again, understanding the steps on your own individual journey in order for this path, for this lifestyle to be sustainable, and not just sustainable, but joyful. That's the thing. Like sitting there and suffering, like, oh, I'm fasting and I'm suffering. Is it really going to be sustainable? And is it really bringing joy and happiness from within you? Because you can put happiness, and when I say happy, it's not like artificial happiness, you have a smile on the face all the time. It's this internal joy that is constantly there. It goes hand in hand with love, with being in a state of love. And it's complete different. There's a complete different flavor to what we refer to as fasting, flavor and fasting. There's a complete different flavor to fasting when you are in that state, when there's less war inside. Then the inner child is not fighting you. Like, I don't want to fast, or I don't, because there's peace. You see, there's peace, there's harmony in the being. If you have years and years of deprivation and trauma, and I want to say also when it comes to deprivation, that maybe you don't have deprivation in the department of food, that you were anorexic and starving yourself. But if you had a different type of deprivation, maybe you did live or you grew up in poverty, and there was a sense of deprivation as a child that traumatized you to some degree. You never got what you really wanted. And you got the message of, well, we can't have that. Again, going back to money, right? Money and food are very connected. So if you had that history, there's a trauma there as well of deprivation. And especially if you were seeing all the other kids, wearing the cool clothes, but you couldn't buy them because there wasn't money. That's a sense of deprivation. These are all little shadows lurking in the background, because then there's the comparison as well, which creates trauma, which I can relate to food on my own journey, and why allowing myself to have certain things is actually more healing than anything else, is also that part of like being deprived and, oh, all the other kids are having this food, but I'm not having because I want to be skinny. So there's that trauma. So you can apply it to the example that I gave in regards to money, if there was poverty around you growing up. So just consider that. Sometimes there's pieces that we might not connect, we might not see the connection, but then when we go into the energetics of things, a light bulb comes on. So there's the trauma of deprivation. I'm putting it under the umbrella of deprivation. And to heal that is to bring more peace, where the inner child, where the first and second chakra are not like so activated and aggravated. And that's where the practice of yoga comes in, because there's certain techniques. Yoga is not like just the, fancy postures that you see, and yoga has now become this like trendy thing, and Lululemon clothes. And again, that's like the distortion of a very, very profound and wise teachings. And so there are certain techniques in yoga, and what yoga means is union. So we are uniting ourselves. There's an inner union. No more war, but inner union. We are uniting our animal and animalistic nature with our divine nature. And that's when we live in our natural state, which is a natural state of union. So in yoga, there are certain techniques that are called sublimation techniques, or sublimation exercises, if it's through certain breathings or certain locks in the body in which we sublimate the energy from the lower chakras to the higher ones. So we bring that animalistic, you can say the desirous second chakra activity more into the heart and the throat area. Because, and that's another clarity that I received, is what we refer to as hunger. It's not actually in the stomach. True hunger, or what we, not even true hunger, but what we refer to as hunger, and we think it's, oh, my stomach, I'm hungry for food. But actually the hunger that we have been accustomed to, we've been wired to, comes from the first and the second chakra. I want you to really contemplate that. It has nothing to do with your tummy. It's your first and second chakra. Because first chakra is related, as I said, to security, to safety. I wrote all this down too. Security, safety, connection to the earth, connection to the body, right? So distortions there are going to rise up hunger, and we think I'm hungry for food. And then second chakra, which is pleasures, desires, what else did I write here? Sexuality, it's the emotional body, it's creativity. So if you're actually not immersed in creativity that brings you joy, we think we're hungry, and then we go out for the food. So hunger actually comes from the first and the second chakra. It has nothing to do with our tummy. When we look at the energetics of hunger. And then when we add the physical aspect, as I mentioned earlier, the fungus, the parasites, that's the physical level of hunger. Alrighty? So certain techniques and certain practices that actually help to sublimate, and you can apply that. It's the same thing with sexuality. It goes hand in hand with people have distortions around sexuality. Sublimating the energy from the first and second chakra, bringing it more into the heart and into the throat and into the third eye and above, is going to help on the purification process, in the purification process. Okay, so when you look at sexuality, when somebody has distorted sexuality, if it's porn or if it's sex addiction, it's the same thing with food. It's the same thing. Energetically, it's the same thing. But think about somebody that has suppressed their sexuality for years and years, right? Many people, and because of religion, I can't have sex, they just deny their human instinct and desires, and the sexuality gets expressed. And then what happens, it gets distorted in the form of porn, sexual addictions and whatnot. So how can you expect somebody like that to just become celibate? So let's say you take this person and they hear about celibacy, they hear about sexual purity, and they want that. They're like, oh, they have a soul calling, just like you have a soul calling to be on this path and become food free or be more pranic. You've got a soul calling. But let's take the sex addict that has suppressed their sexuality for so long. Expecting that person to just jump into celibacy without any internal war and distortions is completely ludicrous. And so the same thing applies to those that aspire to be pranic, to fast without internal war. Be compassionate. Okay, like you can expect to go from years of deprivations and distortions of first, second chakras to whatever capacity, and then jump into, okay, I'm going to be food free and just fast with no issues whatsoever, and becoming free of the patterns, fasting, feasting, fasting, feasting. Again, we're talking about freedom ultimately, not what to eat, how much to fast, is becoming free of all of that. And we just live in our natural state, which requires the purification. It's purification that leads to regeneration, that leads to illumination, that leads to liberation. And those are the 4 pillars. But you can skip from pillar number 1 to liberation. I mean, yes, we can be liberated in a blink of an eye. Really is. It just depends on our karmas. And so that's where things can vary in terms of one individual can pretty quickly, what we refer to as quickly, be in liberation and food free and whatnot, while another person, it's a little bit of a longer journey. That's just karma. And we've all been dealt a different hand. So the bottom line is to enjoy your particular journey, and that to bring peace into that. I've actually just in the last few weeks have come to a deeper sense of peace on my own journey. Like, okay, this is my journey and I'm going to love it fully, because remember, love, it's that essence of consciousness that is going to create the kind of space that supports your greatest aspirations on this path of liberation. So constantly immerse yourself in the essence of love. And that is self-love first and foremost. How can I be more compassionate with myself? What would love do now? What would love say now? What would love choose now? And if you know that you are choosing something other than love, love the one that is choosing that. Okay, I knew that love will skip that extra bite or whatever, but I had it anyway. And I'm going to love the one that it did that, because that's going to help you to not do it again. As simple as that. And simultaneously, you must establish yourself in the practice of meditation is the foundation. And that's something that Eli Tom teaches. And I appreciate it so much. He's like, don't try to put the horse before the cart. Meditate your way to this aspiration, to this manifestation of your greatest aspiration. Meditate your way. And I can speak from my own experience. It works. It's not fighting the patterns. It's not thinking that you're doing something wrong. It's not even about analyzing yourself to death. Like, okay, I'm explaining all these threads and the trauma and the psychological aspects, giving the mind something to chew on. It's important to have that wisdom and the understanding. But at the bottom line is that the healing doesn't come from the analysis and all the understandings and all of that. That's just education that helps. But then let the divine wisdom and the natural state of who you are to bring the healing, the regeneration, the illumination, and ultimately the liberation. And that's why the practice, the meditation is the foundation, is the key. And then other practices that may support that. If it's Qigong or Tai Chi, for me, it's yoga. Have that as a priority. And continue to choose compassion, self-compassion in every single moment, every single day. And especially when you feel that those lower urges, when I say lower, I don't mean negative or bad, but those lower urges kick in. That's when you give yourself the most amount of compassion. Because as I said earlier, that's going to help to diminish those voices, diminish those forces, because those forces feed on lower vibrations, which is negativity, guilt, shame. Those are the big two, guilt and shame. As long as that is running in your system, it's going to continue to feed those lower vibrations. But if you choose, no, I'm going to give myself love and compassion, you feeding the higher vibrations. And the more you feed the higher vibration, the less grip the lower vibrations have that are more coming from, again, the first, the second chakras. So you see how everything is connected. That's why choosing love again and again and again and again is a constant practice that has a lot of other implications that you may not know, but are happening in the background all the time until you see, oh my God, I am making different choices. And if you overeat, maybe it's less frequent. Now there's the changes taking place all the time. Are you present enough with yourself to see those changes? And the more present you are with yourself, the more you enhance that vibration and essence of love, which again, that's the foundation. And to releasing the grip of the reptilian brain, of any traumatic experiences and traumatic signatures, coming out of survival mode into the mode of open heart, into the mode of love. So I'll pause here for the moment, Arik, if there's anything you'd like to ask, or
yeah,
there's so much I can say. I mean, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much. I think that this message, like this webinar, is one of the most important webinars we have ever had, with this message of love, of self-acceptance, of cultivating love towards yourself, even though sometimes it gets, it might bring us out of our fixed ideas of how things should be, how we should eat and stuff like that. But the love is the most important thing. I think this message is really the most important one. So thank you so much. And okay, guys, so now we will open it for questions. Please, you can unmute yourself and ask your question directly if you have any.
I have a question. Hi, Noa. Thank you so much.
Hi, Elaine.
Hi. My question's about bulimia. Is there some sort of a deeper spiritual meaning to bulimia?
I'm so happy you mentioned that, because that was on my notes as well, and I didn't bring it up, but because this is the perfect time. So yes, actually what I recently learned is there's a purification, and again, I'm not advocating bulimia, but there is a purification technique in the yogic tradition. And it's called, some people on this call might be familiar. I know there's a lot of people from India that are very versed in the Hindu tradition and the yogic practices. So there's a practice that is called Vamana Delti. And what you do in Vamana Delti, you drink in just one, you don't eat, you don't stuff yourself with food and then throw up like bulimia. But the practice is that you drink about 2 liters of water in just one shot. You just gulp a ton of water, and then you force vomit, basically. You do the same thing as you do as a bulimia. You put your fingers in and you force vomit. And that cleanses from the stomach all the way up to the esophagus and the throat and the mouth. And it's a purification of the more upper channel of the digestive system, right? Like we have the saltwater flush that goes through everything from top to bottom. The Vamana Delti is more about from stomach upwards. And I haven't done it myself. I don't feel resonance with that, maybe one day. But when I found out about that, I'm like, oh, just like I explained with the anorexia mirabila, there's some wisdom in those practices, in those ancient practices, that we tapped into it from a distorted way. Like, okay, a bulimia, what a bulimic does, they ingest a lot of food and then they throw up. So the spiritual implications of that, I would say, is similar to anorexia, that there's a deeper knowing and a deeper desire, you can say, to be empty. And so the feeling of fullness is so uncomfortable, then, okay, you want to throw up. That's one thing. The other aspects of that, psychologically speaking, what I said earlier, because that has the parallel lines with anorexia and bulimia and eating disorders to various degrees, is really hating one's own body at the end of the day, like wanting to hurt the body, not being at peace with one's own human experience. And so eating a lot is a way to numb. Is a way to numb, is a way to hurt oneself. And it's a way to check out. It's a way to not be present, stuffing yourself so much, but then you feel so uncomfortable that you just got to purge it out. And there's kind of like this sense of suffering that comes with that. There's a sense of inflicting pain. I would say, and this is the clarity that I've received in the last couple of days, especially reading about the anorexia mirabila and being practiced by nuns and spiritual devotees of the Christian and Catholic Church. I feel that when we dive into past lives for a moment, that for some of us that have history with anorexia and bulimia, we also have past lives that are connected to the Christian, to the Catholic Church. The whole idea of suffering and inflicting pain that was very prevalent in the Catholic Church in the name of Christ, and the stigmata and all of that. That's just on a bit of a deeper spiritual levels that I am coming to understand and to see, and that we have that spiritual lineage within our DNA, within our cellular memory. So it's almost as if we found a method, or bulimia is kind of like a method to inflict that pain.
Thank
Does
you.
does that resonate, Elaine? Or
Very much. Yes. So much of what you said resonated. Like I could really relate to the war going on within oneself and going back and forth from fasting to overeating. And I've been swinging back and forth my entire journey on this cellular detoxification pathway. And the swings are getting a little less extreme, but it's always there, this war.
I so hear you, Elaine, and because I know some of your journey, And I know you've
Mhm.
done long dry fasts and
Yep.
such. And I know you've done it with relative ease in terms of able to maintain a 9-day fast or even longer. But again, yes, I am talking about, well, how do we make this sustainable? And most importantly, how do we bring peace to a war zone? So it's not about what we do. Like, yeah, okay, you can do the 9-day dry fast, but if there's still a war going on inside of you, you want to liberate yourself of that. And then you fast for 9 days, or that's just not going to be an issue anymore. And again, if go back to what I've been saying all along, is you'll be in such a state of love and liberation that not eating is not even going to be a difficult thing. It will just be a natural state for you to be in. And to me is much more appealing. To me is much more appealing. It's much more sustainable. It's that much more in alignment with what I aspire to, which is ultimately liberation. I don't want to get caught up in like the fasting and the recipes and how long and how many days. And that's just, again, we returning back to like the Catholic Church.
Mhm. Yeah, me too. That's much more appealing.
Yeah, it's the divine
Mhm.
feminine. It's the divine feminine wisdom that I feel is coming more and more in line. And then when I say feminine, it's not just women, it's just the feminine energy wisdom that is coming online. And it's time for it to also infiltrate and penetrate the topic of fasting, what can be a very masculine, very acidic path.
Yeah.
Hi, Elaine.
Hi, Aranka.
Hello. Can I bring another point to that, what Elaine was raising
Mhm.
about bulimia?
Yeah.
Noah, have you ever thought about that bulimia is not painful? It's not inflicting pain at all. There is no pain, it's pleasure. And we're talking about a different bulimia. We're talking about colon cleansing. You eat the delicious meal, whatever you want, because that's what your reptilian brain is trained to do that. And then you just have a lovely colonic at home. You invest in it and you're set for life. And that's the kind of bulimia Elaine is probably talking about, if I may correct her, but that's what I'm talking about. And there's absolutely no guilt, no pleasure, no pain. But it is something that I would like to get away from soon, because it's time consuming and I really don't need those foods, but those are just experiences that I'm looking after. There's no punishment. There's none whatsoever. There's no trauma. I had a perfect childhood. But I'm just putting my point in there that it's not always the pain or trauma. I find that people fall into this trap of, oh my goodness, what kind of trauma did I go through?
I appreciate what you're sharing. What I brought to the picture, and I believe that that's what Elaine was referring to, because I have history of actual bulimia, of stuffing myself and then throwing up. And I can tell you from my experience, it is nothing, there's nothing joyful about it. The pain psychologically, emotionally, and physically is immense. The kind of trauma that you actually create in the body is absolutely incredible. And so there's really nothing joyful about that. So I don't really understand what kind of bulimia you are referring to. And I just feel that we're talking about two different things.
Okay, that's all. Just wanted to put it out that there are some people who do different kind of bulimia that is not painful. Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay, guys, please unmute yourself if you have any more questions.
Can I say something? Hi.
Hi,
Sure,
Rita. Hi, love.
Shalom, shalom.
Hi, Shalom. Nice to listen to you again, to all your wisdom. And I don't know if it's a question. It's why is there, I don't know, a lot of the feeling of deprivation. I really identified with it, and and then we have to make up for all this, all the feelings of deprivation. Why do we need all these you know, all these, why do we adopt all these self-destructive behavior in order to make up for, I don't know, deprivations? I mean, it's tragic that so many people suffer from deprivations, and I don't know. And then we develop all these self-destructive behaviors, trying to make it up for ourselves, and you know, it's a vicious circle to trying to break out of it. Why do we go through all these painful experiences? I mean, does anyone experience? I don't know. Aranka just said that she had a happy childhood and didn't have to develop all these destructive behaviors. I don't know. I'm just, you know, thinking out loud. I don't even know if it's a question. You know, I hear it a lot from other people when you speak. When Ivana spoke, you know, the things from childhood come up. Sadness. I don't know. Deprivations, traumas.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying here, and again, on a soul level, and when you ask the why, it's a really big why, because on a soul level, each and every one of us has chosen a particular journey, and that's what I mean when I say karma. When I say that you have a particular karma, you chose the country that you were born in, and the parents and the family and the background, and you also chose a particular journey. So I chose as a soul to, on my journey, to experience eating disorders in the way that I have. And but that doesn't mean that everybody has chosen that, right? That's part of my journey. And the beautiful thing is that, and this is part of, you can say, why we are here, is return back to our natural state and return back to love, and to embrace every single thing that I have experienced on my journey and see it as a gift, because it is. Because look at me now. So when I was in the deep dark hole of starving myself or throwing up in the bathroom and all the pain that brought into my life, did I know that I would be sitting 20 something years later on a webinar and talking about chronic living and food liberation as it relates to anorexia and bulimia and food disorders, right? So that's the beautiful thing about life. It's kind of like a video game that you don't know what's going to be the next treat or the next adventure. And that is the path of love. It's the path of surrender. It's the path of the heart, that I am here, open, ready, and fully able and willing to receive and embrace all that comes my way. And knowing that there is wisdom behind everything, even if I'm unable to see it right here, right now. But that's where the practice of yoga and meditation becomes so essential, because the more you quiet the mind, the more present one can become. And it's a lot easier to embrace life with joy and excitement and the curiosity of a child. And that diminish all the trauma and all the suffering in a blink of an eye. Because ultimately we didn't come here to suffer. I mean, we can go into the deeper reasoning of why it's happening, what in the world and the agenda, blah, blah, blah. But I don't even like to go into those conversations, because ultimately love and light will always prevail. The truth will set us free. The truth does and will set us free. And so what is the truth? The truth is that you are a divine being, full of light. You are light manifesting in a physical form. I actually came with a new acronym for self. What self is, SELF, is sacred embodiment of light frequencies.
Wow.
That is the truth. And so it's always just staying focused on your lane, Revital, staying focused on your journey. Because not everybody has chosen this lifetime to be liberated. That's another thing to understand. I personally, I have opted out of the incarnation wheel, meaning I'm okay with not coming back into a physical form. So my aspiration is liberation. And it's not even about the next incarnation, yes, no, blah, blah, blah. It's here and now. I choose to experience the full capacity of my joy and love and freedom that I know is meant for me to experience. But not everybody aspires to that. Why is that? It doesn't matter, because we all have a chosen journey and a different journey. But if you aspire to be liberated, then stay focused on that. And you make your choices based on that aspiration. What is going to bring me closer and in complete union with that state of liberation, which is equivalent to the question, what would love do now? Because it's that step of love that is going to bring us to that state of union and liberation. They're all the same: union, love, liberation. I see it all as the same kind of essence.
Okay, thank you.
Mm.
I'm trying, because now that you're an adult, you can take control of your life. You can be aware of what's happening to you and try to understand it and try to control it. Because when you were a child, you were independent and you were unaware and you were dependent on others. So you got to take control of your life and be aware of what's happening to you and be in control. And it's like a set of beliefs. You have to decide what your story is, what you believe in. You decide on the story of your life. That's right.
Correct. Yeah, you're the director of the movie. Absolutely. And it's also the unification of the adult. You can say, yes, you are an adult, we are adults, but the inner child is still there. And that is a piece that I feel is very important for people to understand and embrace, because that inner child, or that child side of you, never goes away.
Yeah.
It actually, the more you liberate yourself, the more you purify, the more you liberate, the more you illuminate, the more childlike you become. Not just physically, that's the thing. Like, and you see in all people that are really have been established on the pranic path, not only that they become younger and younger in their appearance, but their attitude, their state of being, their state of operating is so childlike, right? Because that is who we are. We are children in the garden of God, Garden of Eden. That is the essential truth.
Yeah, when we get rid of all the defense mechanisms and everything, we surrendered all the walls we surrendered ourselves with in order to protect ourselves and actually connect with ourselves. Yeah, we're like children, without all the masks, without all the walls, without all the false defense mechanisms.
Right.
Well, we're trying to protect ourselves, but actually we're covering ourselves. We're drowning under all these barriers that we're limiting ourselves with.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you for your insights on the topic. It's very
you.
fascinating.
Thank you.
Noa, thank you.
Okay, guys, any more questions? Just unmute yourself and ask directly.
I have a comment.
Yes.
I would love to say that I really loved spending the afternoon listening to you. It was wonderful. It was entertaining, interesting, expansive, motivating, inspirational. It was wonderful. So fun to be listening to for the afternoon.
Awesome, John. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Let me have the pleasure to introduce John to this amazing community. John is an unfolding specialist by himself, and he's a detox specialist as well, and he's a level 3 Breatharian practitioner too. He even gave a talk in the Pranic World Festival with the Breatharians, even with Jess Moheen, with Eli Tom. He had some amazing retreats with Eli Tom as well, you know, and he's doing an amazing job with his self-love community, you know, with the global health community. So yeah, he's from Canada. So I've been talking to John about this community previously, and now he's with us. It's great to see. And thanks, Noa, for this amazing talk which you have given us. It's really great to listen to your wisdom.
Ravi, thank you so much. And John, welcome. Welcome to this community. And it's beautiful. It seems like you and I are like pretty much the self-love coach, detox specialist. And I'm still not level 3 Breatharian, but I'm moving in that direction.
Well, I don't know if you're going to call me level 3 breatharian any longer either. I really have embraced that, you know, eating and relaxing philosophy. I totally resonated with what you were saying. Like, it really has to become lifestyle. And the way that it becomes a lifestyle is by embracing short fasts and then practicing eating too. It's a little bit of both, masculine and feminine. And this is how we make new decisions in our life. I think what you said today was wonderful. I just resonated with all of it and connected with it, especially with, you know, my past coming from bodybuilding. I really connected with your, like, you know, there's a food disorder that happened for me with bodybuilding, and it was a body image disorder that happened with me with bodybuilding. So, you know, bringing it all back together, loving yourself through the masculine decision and the feminine imagination. I loved it.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here. Appreciate that.
Yeah, John, and I just want to add that if one day, if you want to share with us your wisdom, we will be really, really happy to host
Oh,
you
so
for
cool. I would
webinar.
so
Yeah,
love to do that. I would so love to do that with you and collaborate more on what else to do, because this is what it's about. It's re-educating people. And this
yeah,
is how it
absolutely.
happens with information and time and devotion and passion and people that are passionate about it. So wonderful, wonderful to be around other people that are passionate about those things.
Absolutely. We need to spread the light. So I'll be in touch with you. I'll get your WhatsApp number,
Awesome.
phone number, and we will
Awesome.
schedule. We'll prepare something
Awesome.
interesting, and we'll have fun as well.
Awesome.
Have lots of fun.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, guys, do you have any more questions for Noa?
Noa, I love that you have talked about the chakras today, the energy centers. Can you elaborate on the heart chakra, you know, the Vishuddhi, the Agya, and the Sahasra chakras, and what are the specific practices, I mean, your practices, or which you want to share with us, you know, to remove the blockages, if any, to, you know, get them activated?
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. So do you have a yoga practice, Ravi, in general? Do you practice yoga?
You know, Noa, I've been, you know, previously I was into this yoga practices, but not anymore. You know, I'm just a sun gazing and grounding, you know, and I've been connected to nature, you know,
Yeah.
these
Okay.
practices, Qigong, which I've been doing these days. And of course, I've been doing the Tibetan rites as well.
Okay. Well, my personal practice, I appreciate all those practices like Qigong and Tai Chi. And I know that you can direct energy with those practices as well. So if it's the heart chakra, throat, third eye and above. But my personal practice, the one that I resonate with, is the yoga practice and Hatha yoga, Kundalini yoga, but it's more Hatha these days. And there are so many asanas that open the heart center that open the throat. And there are particular asanas in which, the focus is on the third eye. Any inversions will direct energy more into the crown. And if you practice the locks, the Udaya Bandha, that's the sublimation of energy that I was referring to, from the lower chakras to the upper chakras. So the Udayana Bandha is more for the solar plexus, but it's definitely for the heart and the throat if you add the throat lock as well. So my practice, and the one that I resonate and the one that I work with, is the yoga practice in different asanas that are literally like, it's a prescription. If somebody has a certain imbalance in a particular chakra and whatnot, there are literally particular asanas, just like detox protocols that I can give somebody that has adrenal weaknesses and whatnot. There are particular asanas that somebody can apply as a prescription if they need to either strengthen, activate, or rebalance the energetic systems. Now, I also want to say, and I actually did a webinar on that, Arik, with the connection of the glands in the body and the energy systems.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so when we start to detox and regenerate, it really balances and regenerates everything, including the energy centers that we refer to as chakras. So the heart chakra is connected to the thymus, and then the throat is the thyroid and the parathyroid. And then when we go into the third eye and the crown, we're looking at the brain, and that's the hypothalamus and the pituitary and the pineal gland. So it's all connected. And when you do the yoga asanas, just like with the regenerative detoxification, you do address all bodies. So although those are physical asanas, but they also work on the energy body.
Okay. Do you think this EMR, is affecting the energy body? And, apart from detoxification, if you think there are any ways to discharge this EMR?
Electromagnetic radiation,
Yes.
you mean?
Yes, yeah.
My approach to that, Ravi, is I know there's a lot of crap going on around us. And my personal approach is that when you are in a field of light and truth, you are untouchable.
Okay.
So does it have the ability to affect us to a certain degree? Yes. However, though, nothing is stronger than the force that lives within you, that is you.
The light force.
Period.
Okay.
And that's what I choose to follow. And so, it's whatever you resonate with.
Yeah, that is what I was thinking. I was thinking on the same lines as well, Noa, but I just wanted to pick up your brains on this. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Thank you, Arik. Yes, fabulous, man, for organizing this webinar.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, guys. So do you have any more questions? Otherwise, we will just be wrapping it up. If you do have, just unmute yourself and ask.
I'd like to ask one question. It's been a fantastic webinar. This is my first time taking the chance to put a question. It's more looking for a guidance from you, Noa, because in my teenager years, I was leaning towards anorexia, but not serious, not something serious. But what I noticed it as I was very isolated because of that kind of anorexia, or that situation I was in. And today I feel myself, I feel very troubled if I have to in a way not participate of the same food that people at my workplace are eating, or even my friends, if they are eating something. I just feel isolated and a bit weird if I don't participate, if I don't do the same as them. And also I feel that in some way I'm always reminded of being isolated, even though with my spiritual practices, I cannot keep them for a long time because I feel I have to do it all alone. So could you guide me how to make it something like a routine, something that I can follow, even though I know that I'm doing it by myself. Because I don't feel that it's very satisfying to participate on things online. I prefer to have people around me, but that's not possible right now. So I'd love your guidance, Noah. Thank you for the speech today.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for sharing. And I deeply resonate with what you are bringing up to the surface here. I as well have felt isolated, or you can say different, throughout my life. And I've come to terms with that in a sense of, okay, this is what I have chosen for my path. And I feel that that sense of isolation also has brought me and continues to bring me closer and closer to God, myself. And basically, or the sense of being isolated, or sense of being alone is an illusion, meaning that we are never alone. And it's a motivation to open up your own consciousness and find that sense of unity within. And so it doesn't matter where you are and who you are with, you always feel embraced, loved, and supported. So I know the pain of what you are sharing and experiencing, and I still have that at times where I feel so alone and so isolated, and so just the path that I'm living and walking. And if it's the food and my spiritual practice, the thing for me is that it has turned into complete devotion. And that word is very strong for me. It's I'm devoted to God. Ultimately, that's not anything religious. It's life. It's my own soul. And I continue to strengthen my devotion to that and eliminate the distractions, even in the form of the thoughts and the thought patterns and the negative influences of the mind. Those are just distractions. So the remedy, you can say, for that again is a meditation, is having a practice. And the yoga practice for me, as I said, has brought so much healing and regeneration to my life. And I understand also the challenge that you are experiencing in regards to feeling alone and wanting to do it with people. That is something that I have been praying for many years. I have a strong personal practice, and I'm really grateful for that. And for you, what I would say is, either in the meantime, find an online community, people that you can do it online. I know it's not the same, but at least it's something, and you at least feel that you are connected to other beings. That's number one. Number two, look at the options. Look at what is possible for you, where you can maybe physically be somewhere that you can be with people that support you on your spiritual practice, and you can do it together. Meaning, just keep your mind open, even with what's going on in the world right now. Just keep your mind open and keep asking the question, what is possible? Keep sending the signal out there, because what you seek is seeking you. And that's the miracle, and that's the magic of the life that we live. And you will attract, you will magnetize into your life that which you are yearning for. And there's this pure, genuine prayer in your heart. And that's number two. And number three is do whatever you can, Vanessa, whatever is doable for you, but stay grounded and stay rooted in your practice. Even if it's 5 minutes a day, even if you just get on your mat and you do yoga for 5 minutes, or you sit and you meditate for 5 minutes, just have it a daily thing in which you are devoted to. And stay true to your path. Yes. When it comes to the food, when it comes to the choices, because there's a difference between deprivation and staying true to yourself. And that's something that I've definitely experienced on my path for so long. There's a difference. There's a different in the energy, when you kind of like, you feel deprived, like you really want to have something and all your friends are having and you're not, and you feel deprived, that is different than you at a party, your friends are having something, but you genuinely are not interested. Just like if I would offer you a line of cocaine and you're like not interested. It's this, it's like, I'm not interested in having the pizza or whatever it is.
Yes.
So, you know, there's a difference in the energetics of
Yes.
that. And if you feel that deprivation and you're like, you know what, actually what would love do now is maybe have that piece of cake that all my friends are having. If you know that that's the most loving thing that will bring more peace to your being, then you make the loving choice for yourself.
Yeah, I try to do it. I try to, and I notice myself that these are mainly distractions of my mind, and also maybe because of the issue you talked about the fungus, because that's
Yeah.
a huge problem for me. And last year I just had yeast overgrowth, and it affected my whole body almost, inclusive my brain. I couldn't keep balance, for example. It's like it was like fainting. I don't. And trying to meditate, then it became very difficult because my mind just couldn't be still.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to detoxify, but sometimes I go back and eat the same foods I know are causing the problem. So it's going back and forth. I feel that I've moved on, but I'm sometimes bitter because I feel that I didn't have all the information at the same time. I knew that I could go vegetarian, but I didn't know I shouldn't mix the oils with the fruits. And then it led to candida or yeast overgrowth. So it's a little bit of mixed feelings about those situations, because I felt when I was eating fruit and my salads with olive oil, I felt that I was doing everything right, and then came yeast overgrowth, and then it was a kick. In a way, it just made me very unmotivated. So it made it very difficult to meditate, concentrate, and everything else. So now I'm trying to build myself up and avoid distractions and hope that my body will get strengthened and that my nervous system will get better in the future. But it's a hard road. It feels like right now.
It's a journey for sure, and that's why I keep emphasizing the importance of love and compassion.
Yes.
to oneself and your journey and your human experience. Yes, for sure, don't underestimate the value and the necessity of detoxification. Like those fungus and parasites are no joke. That's why the detox protocols immediately you get on the parasite formulas and the microorganisms, because they control not just your hunger cravings, but your consciousness.
Yes.
And so it has to go hand in hand with an emotional detox protocol, with different practices to support the process. And so, you know, guidance is essential if it's being part of a community or having a coach working with you, whatever it may be for you. What I have found to be so beautiful on this path is, and I said it earlier, the power of prayer and putting your intention out there and speak to the God within you. It's nothing outside of yourself, but it's the God within you, your soul. Speak to that one and ask for help, ask for support, and have that intention in your heart. And then rest assured, it's not even about trusting, but know without a shred of a doubt that help will present itself.
Yes.
And if it's in the form of a community, if it's in the form of a coach, whatever a piece of information, and we learn as we go. I know that feeling. It's like, oh, nobody told me this. And I work and talk to so many people as a detox specialist that they think they eat healthy, but have no idea, right? Just like what you are saying, but this is your journey. This is your journey. So nothing to be bitter about, but more about, okay, you learned through your experience. So now you can pass that valuable information to others.
Yes.
and just know that there's something there for you. Just like I said earlier, I didn't know 20 years ago that my own dark road of starving myself and puking myself, whatever it is, would lead me to where I am now, right? So the answers don't always reveal themselves to us immediately. Sometimes it's a matter of weeks, sometimes it's months, and sometimes it's decades.
Mm.
And it's utterly loving and being in love and rising in love with your own particular journey, Vanessa. Your
Yes.
own particular lane, your own particular journey. And the more you love it, the more love you will experience in return.
Yes. I can somehow see it, understand it. It's just more the feeling right now that I have to go through it. But Noah, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's very.
Vanessa, I also wanted to add that I have quite a lot of experience in different kinds of meditations, and also some knowledge about adjusting a particular kind of meditation or spiritual practice to the particular personality of a person. So, so if you are interested, we could just you could just contact me personally, and then we could try to do that according to your particular needs, the time you can dedicate to that, your personality and stuff like that. We could adjust, because meditation is a general term, but you have lots of kinds of meditation, starting from observing your breathing and ending with different visualizations and things like that. So each person might need different kind of practice at different periods of their life. So yeah, so in any case, if you are interested, you can just contact me personally, and then we can see what we do about that.
Okay, thank you very much, Arik.
Sure.
I will, surely, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, guys, before we wrap it up, do you have any more questions? Okay, so just a moment. Okay, Noah, so we are going to wrap it up soon. And as usual, I would love to ask you about the services that you provide to people and how they can contact you, and if you have any retreats that you will be doing in the near future. Could you please tell us about that?
Yeah, thank you, Arik. So yes, I do. Well, how to describe it? I guess I'll just keep it simple. But regenerative detoxification specialist. So this is what I'm passionate about, is helping people to purify, just like I explained on this webinar, to purify on all levels, so you can experience more freedom, physically, emotionally, mentally, and I do a lot of spiritual work, for sure. I'm very based in soul. Astrology is another modality that I combine. And so I guide people through a very holistic lens, and side by side with the physical elements of regenerative detoxification and detoxification protocols and everything that entails. I'm more and more moving in the direction of food freedom and pranic living, and how to attain that state in a natural, organic way, and make it joyful, and living in our natural state. I really feel it's a deep calling of mine. So I'm right now formulating a 3-month immersion that will begin in January for people that do aspire to live in this way, to be free, to be nourished by prana. But it really is about to live in our natural state. I don't even like to use the word pranic nourishment, but to live in our natural state. And so it will be a 3-month immersion, very profound, very deep, going to be a very small group as well, because I want to keep it intimate for people that are really serious about it. You can say disciples of the path of the heart, and devoted to God and to our natural state. So that will be coming in January, and not more towards the middle of end of January. And right now, I mean, I work as a coach also one-on-one. However, though, I'm not really working with clients at the moment until next year. However, though, you're more than welcome to contact me if it's just for a one session. Perhaps I can be open to that, but I'm not doing any one-on-one coaching at the moment. That is long term.
Mhm. No, and if people are interested in this immersion program, what is the registration process, or how would they go about that?
And then contact me directly, either on WhatsApp or my email, noalakshmi@gmail.com. You can put that in the description box.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll put all your contact details in the description.
Yeah, you can look at my website, noalakshmi.com. And but yeah, either WhatsApp or email, and then we can take it from there.
Cool, cool. Okay, Noah, so thank you so much. As I said, it was one of the most important webinars we have ever had so far, in my opinion. And I think that all the people, all the participants really enjoyed it. So thank you so much.
Oh, Arik, thank you so much. It was just so perfect. It was last week and it was my birthday too, exactly a week ago, that I messaged Arik and I said, hey,
cool.
I have this idea, and if by any chance you have an open spot next week, that will be perfect, because other than that, I won't be available until pretty much January.
Wow.
And it's all in divine orchestration, and life is so beautiful. And I appreciate you, Arik, always and all of you that came to this talk today. Thank you so much. And John, yeah, just contact me on WhatsApp. Are you part of the fasting group?
No,
On the WhatsApp, John?
I can give your number, Noah, to him.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so just contact me on WhatsApp, and I mean, this is sharing this is a great joy of mine, as you know. So I would love to present that to your audience. Thank you so much.
Awesome. That's so cool. We're going to do that.
Yeah.
And any
Awesome.
ways that we can collaborate, because I'm all about collaboration,
yes.
and bringing
Awesome.
the
Let's
different.
do that. Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Awesome.
Okay, guys, so thank you so much. Noah, congratulations for your birthday. Happy birthday. And we all wish you all the best and all the blessings in the world.
Thank you. Each and every one of you is such a blessing. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, guys. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Noah. Thanks, Arik.
Thank you.